Hello everyone and welcome to another crawler build video. Now before we get into the time lapse and all the fun stuff there, I want to really quickly address two things. First of all, I clearly saw how stuff went out with the previous video, and I have decided to focus not on really overall project updates, but rather a specific project that actually was suggested to me by one of my viewers, who happens to be Aladdin, for those of you that have been with the channel for a while, that I'm going to be just kind of showing what my thought process is, and it's an entirely brand new build. It's not a recreation of anything, so it'll be kind of a fun project that I'm hoping that you guys join in on and have a fun time kind of watching me figure out what in the world I'm doing, because it's going to be a very interesting project. Now, tell you only one thing. It involves Avatar: The Last Airbender, or at least the anime. So that's something to look forward to for next week. Second of all, I apologize if the video or the time lapse seems kind of short. I have been working very hard on both classwork and also on my locomotive, to the point that I have gotten more scratches this past week than I have, I think, in the past, like, the month beforehand. I'm literally, like, I'm pretty sure I literally just stopped bleeding from one of my scratches. In fact, it's that bad. That being said, I'm getting somewhere with that, so thankfully that's occurring, and hopefully that will slowly stop interrupting quite as much of the video taking that it has been in the past. I've also got some new background audio, thankfully. So credit to I don't even know if they have a specific thing. No, it's just a royalty free mix that I'm just gonna have playing in the background. Nothing super fancy. So yeah. Speaking of fancy, let us get into the actual time lapse, shall we? So a lot of this time lapse, at least in the beginning part, as I mentioned, is mostly me just. Oh, there we go. Is mostly me just doing a lot of like small work, because I was kind of busy with other things at the time, and I didn't really have a clear direction on where I wanted to go from here. So when I finally show where I go with it, I will come back. So as you can see, I started to put in some proper control systems that were not there originally, and I also started building out some of the crew deck. Now you'll notice that I'm building kind of this weird wall thing. In my opinion, true doors should not be immediately visible. The pathway to them should be visible, but not the doors themselves. So that's kind of what I was doing. Now, I've also, this is the first time I got to play with the new manual doors that came with in Stormworks recently. So you'll see a lot of those being implemented here. In fact, later down the video, I actually redo some of my doors with the manual doors, because I think they're really nice. And I will admit, the logic kind of confuses me that, like, it's not you can't, like, change what the default state is, but I'm sure that there's a reason that they decided to do it, so we'll go with it. And again, as always, using the passcode. My brain's dead somewhere. I'm sorry. The passcode microcontroller that I used in previous videos. This is me just kind of setting up the logic, and I actually redo this logic later on. That's really distracting. That, I assure you, that's actually in the music. What sounds like a phone call in the background. That's actually, in fact, the music, and it's gonna drive me nuts. That tripped me up really badly when I first started hearing that. This is my first time hearing this music, so I'll let you go back. Alright, so as you may have noticed, I kind of did some funky things with logic earlier, and I screwed up a lot of my doors. And I screwed up a fair bit of logic, in fact, as well. So, just goes to show that I really don't leave much out in terms of these videos. You see all my mistakes. So here comes something that... So, this entire door drove me mad. Drove me crazy. And that's because I still haven't figured out how to do the connection to the next unit on this side. So, as a result, you can see I'm kind of going a bit insane trying to figure out how to do it. And I'm still not entirely happy with how the connection setup works. Or rather, I don't like how the two units flow together. And you'll see kind of what I mean later once I start actually working on the body near this joint, or this connection. I was trying to go for like a sloped shape, and I'm still not sure if I want to do that, but as I was building this, my mind was thinking, oh, I could have like almost like a bell curve almost, with the middle of the bell curve being the middle unit. And I'm still not sure if I want to go with that idea, but that's kind of what I started to do with some of the body. You'll notice I'm starting to build a platform for this as well, since it's kind of raised off the ground, which again was part of building the body in kind of a weird shape. So, as you may have noticed, I did some kind of weird things in regards to this ramp. Originally, the ramp was going directly from the door into the what I'm referring to as the tank room. Currently, I don't know what it's actually going to be, um, but I kind of redesigned it because I realized that if I want, say for example, I wanted to move carts around between the various units, like hand carts or something, and one of I wanted to have, say, stock, like store stock on the hand carts, be able to move between the units. Well, the stock room would be probably connected to the elevator, and it doesn't make sense to have to go out of the out of the connection room, out into the hall, go down the hall, then come into another room just to store stock. It didn't make sense for me, especially when the tank room, again, that's a temporary name, especially since the tank room at this point doesn't have a reason to connect to that next unit, to the middle unit between the two front tread connectors. So that's why I kind of redid that. So this area that you've kind of seen me working on is eventually going to be a storeroom, specifically for stores, obviously. Specifically, probably front stores and stores off to the side. That being said, I still haven't figured out what I want them to sell, so I haven't put up any sort of shelving units in them. Also, because I can't really find any good shelving units that aren't painted. Or made out of windows, I suppose. So, it looks pretty empty at the moment. You'll see in the video, it's pretty darn empty. But it will get filled up with, like, stock and products and what have you. So you'll see I'm kind of building this room out. And I've got that follow me line going there. That follow me line, specifically that color, is supposed to indicate mechanical connections. I can speak. So my thought process is, well, if they're coming from the main unit and they need to go to the local control room, they would probably come through the unit between the two turn units. So that's why I've got the line following there like that. So that they could just use the follow me line and they'll get to the local control room. So here comes something that has been a bit of an interesting trick for me to do, I suppose. As you can see, I've modified the legs that the whole unit is standing on because I don't want to modify the unit just to remove the legs between the user-created versions, or rather, the people that want to build it themselves in-game, versus the people that use, say, a mission to spawn it in. So that's why I built the legs the way that I rebuilt the legs the way I have, such that they can be kind of retracted as needed. Now, originally when I built the legs, that wasn't the case, but as time has gone on, I've decided that I might as well just swap them over to be kind of retractable. There's no sort of like downside, I suppose, to making them that way. They don't take up hardly any more space. Speaking of taking up space, you may have noticed that as I was kind of enclosing that storage area, that I have a lot of open space that is just kind of hidden behind walls. And while I am aware that it's kind of against what I said about I want the whole thing jam-packed with stuff, but you have to understand that there are certain situations where it's not actually optimal to put a room in. For example, especially when I know I'm going to be redoing parts of the outer shell of the unit. That being said, some of those areas I'm actually going to be redoing as like essentially pipe connections and as hidden storage space. So such stuff as tanks and batteries and that kind of stuff, and especially a lot of weighted blocks. I'm probably going to have a lot more weighted blocks than I originally anticipated, simply because of all the open space that the entire crawler is likely to have. And obviously, you need to weigh that down somehow. And I don't really like having what are, I think, I'm pretty sure people just call them custom tanks. They're essentially using open spaces as tanks. I'm not a fan of them because I find that they don't really make processors happy, I guess is a good way of putting it. I've noticed that, at least with my computer, when you've got really, really, really big custom tanks like that, they don't really play nice with my graphics card. And I don't know if that's just in like a general problem that the game has with like trying to do water physics inside a contained area. I honestly don't know. But that being said, I don't really enjoy having to use them. So that's why I'm going to try and use weighted blocks instead of, say, just a water ballast area. So while they might be watertight, regardless, they're probably not going to be custom tanks. As you can see, here I'm finally putting in a one of the new manual doors for the turret control room, because I figured that there's not really any reason for it to be electric. You'll notice that I will go back a couple times and kind of reconfigure stuff. Now this is also an interesting first for me. This is the first time I ever actually used painted indicators. And specifically, this is supposed to indicate that this is for the local control area. And I had some interesting times trying to figure it out. Specifically, at the time, I had no clue how in the world to get it, because this is supposed to be one of those that can light up and change slightly when they light up. I had no clue at the time how to do that, and I later found out how to do so. And you'll see later on I fixed that. But you can see I'm just kind of confused about that. And later on I eventually figured out what I was doing wrong, and I go ahead and fix it. So this is me mostly just trying to figure out how exactly that works. It's not necessarily intuitive unless you read the description, which I was stupid and didn't read. Which is ironic considering I'm very much a kind of person that says RFTM. So, Sorry, RTFM. My bad. I'm tired, apparently. For those of you that don't know what RTFM means, it's essentially read the manual. It's a bit more, I don't want to say vulgar, but it's a bit more colorful than just read the manual. But I'm sure for those of you that know your curse words, you can figure out pretty quickly what it means. So this is me just kind of building in an area for the legs to retract into, because it doesn't really make sense to have them just kind of flopping around or like having a hole, say, in the side of the unit. I also forgot that this is around the time that I noticed a very interesting occurrence that I had done, and when we zoom back out, but I'll point it out because I think I even like circle my cursor around just to indicate when I finally noticed it. I inadvertently made a face on the side of the unit, which I know sounds really strange, but it was something that I was not aware that I had accidentally done. And there's actually technically 3 of them across the entire unit, and it's at every single connection point. The 2 passenger deck doors and the giant door creates kind of a weird face, and it really did not occur to me until I was finally staring at it, thinking there's something weird here, and until I finally noticed that's what was going on. Now, these tiny little rooms that I've got kind of sitting off to the side, I know they look kind of weird. That's because my vision for them is janitor closets. And I know that sounds really strange, but that's kind of how my brain was thinking at the time. And probably there would be a janitor closet, especially since it's near a bar. So this is me kind of fiddling around with stuff. I finally just decided to do what my brain calls, and I know there's probably a proper term for this, but in my head I call it a key unlock, or a ID unlock, which essentially just means that you put in your ID and it unlocks the door temporarily for how many seconds. In this case, I set it up to be 3 seconds. And after those 3 seconds, it locks back up, which actually works really well for the doors, because once they're open and they're locked, they don't automatically close. You have to close them back up after they've been locked. So that actually worked out very nicely in this specific situation. So, excuse me. So I redid the storefront door. There we go. I could speak. The store door to be like that as well. This is also when I discovered a rather unfortunate quirk about the painted signs. And this might just be me being stupid. I'm not aware of a way to copy what's on those to another block. Now, I'm sure there probably is a way, because if not, be amazed. But I still haven't figured out how yet. So this, now, excuse me. I'm sorry, I keep yawning. So this is me just putting in like a little sign to indicate that this is not for public walk area, because this is supposed to go into the bowels of the crawler. Technically, I suppose. So, this is also about the time that I realized what I was doing wrong in regards to trying to paint that light. So now, it's set up that whenever the control room has power, you will be able to, you'll be able to see that the light on the sign is lit, and when the control room has no power, the sign is not lit. So it's just a very, very, very handy way of checking to see, okay, do we have power? Are we wasting power? Kind of situation, if you would. So, as you can see, that is the end of the time lapse. Now, for those of you that are kind of trying to figure out what in the world those wheels were for, that was me trying to figure out a way to deal with getting the actual that unit out into the water to do testing. I eventually figured out that it doesn't work because there's a 1 block height difference between it scraping the ground, or specifically the large connector scraping against the ground, and actually being able to move the entire unit. And it's that 1 block difference that I just could not get around. So I did eventually I got rid of the wheels behind the scenes. They're no longer there, for better or worse. That being said, let's actually go into game. And for the first time ever, I'm already in the crawler as we load in, which is amazing to me that I actually had the forethought to do so. Hold on. I think the entire thing is listing to the side ever so slightly. That's concerning. So as I mentioned earlier, the turn control room, geez, I can speak, is set up such that if it doesn't have any power, it's not lit, and when it's on, the sign is lit. And it occurs to me now, that sign is so bright that you can't really tell what it's supposed to be. But it's actually supposed to be a steering wheel, in case you weren't able to figure that out during the time lapse. Ooh, I love that sound. Oh, you can't really hear it. Hold on. Turn that up nice and loudly. I love that sound effect. That's such a great sound effect. So here's the raised legs control, as you may have noticed. God, I love that sound. I love that sound way too much. And as we go into here, you can see that it's now fully enclosed. I still have not yet decided what I'm going to be putting in. Oh, I guess it's not fully enclosed. Glad I found that out before we put it into the water. I still haven't figured out what the tanks are for and what the rest of the room is going to be used for. It's probably going to be like a pumping station for something. Not sure what yet. Maybe air. I don't know yet. So we'll figure that out as we go along, or if you guys have suggestions, I'm more than willing to hear it, what you guys have in mind. Excuse me, I keep yawning. I am so sorry. That's actually really interesting. I just noticed that the when the lights in the corridors are not on, which they aren't in general, you can't really tell what the colors these are very easily. But this is the blue path, and this is the storage room. Here's the lovely connector, which looks kind of derpy, but it's not supposed to look nice. Oh, I forgot to turn that on disconnect B. Whoops. It's not supposed to look pretty. It's supposed to look functional. And that's really the whole kind of idea with the entire thing. Is it's supposed to look functional. Speaking of functional, though. Speaking of functional. It'd be really helpful if it was functioning, wasn't it? I finally got around to fixing the camera. Really quickly run down here, and I'm just going to turn on all the electrics. Even though I know I don't need all the electrics, it's better to just turn them all on. Come on. Turn on. There we go. I don't know why, I've been having trouble, like, aiming recently. So you can see that the even with the mirror mode, it didn't copy over. Which is kind of sad. But I finally got around to moving that darn camera. So now it's no longer clipping into the side of the blocks. And if I zoom out, you can see it's actually... Whoa. It's actually fully protruding. That's the only way I could find it to not clip through. Which is kind of annoying, but... I mean, I'd rather have it look... I'd rather have what's visible look realistic rather than on the outside of it looking funny. Which I know is a weird thing to think about, but... oh, right. I know it's a weird thing to think about, but that's just how my brain works. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is also now a locked door. Elevator has not changed at all. I don't plan on changing it, because I honestly rather like the design. It's quick, simple, and dirty. So as you can see, doesn't open. Put in the passcode. I'm able to open it for a time, and then it goes back into being in the lock state. And here's the opposite button. I'm not sure why it struggles. It doesn't charge quite as quickly with the button. I might need to take a look into that. But as you can see, it stays open once it's locked. And then once it's closed and it's locked, it don't open. Which is really useful. I still have not figured out what I'm putting in this back areas, except for possibly like maybe a lounge, like a lounge-ish area. Same on this side. But I am more than happy to hear your ideas, your thoughts on it. And honestly, that's all I've got for today's update. I did finally fix the spotlight as well, so it's now actually aiming outwards. And as you can see, there are no wheels. So, as always, this has been the crawler video and the crawler series. This has been specifically Unit 1C. As always, I am always happy to hear your input, because I do want this to be a community build. I know it doesn't seem like it at times, because not a lot of you have really voiced much opinion, but it is supposed to be a community build. I do want to hear your voices, because this is something that I can't do alone. Even though I really would love to, I can't do this alone. I'm not that smart. I'm not that creative. So, please let me know what you guys would like to see happening, especially since I'm probably going to be moving on to another unit very soon, simply while I kind of try and figure out what I want to put into this unit and the empty spaces. So please let me know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, and if you really want to, which I highly recommend you do, if you like this video, please hit that subscribe button and that tiny bell icon, and make sure you select all so you get notified every single time I post up a new video, because YouTube's stupid and it won't tell you when I post up a new video. So, as always, I hope you enjoyed the video. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye.